So today I'm actually doing a video, not just audio. It's something new. We're going to try this out. This is the first time doing a Zoom interview. And today I have with me Robert. Is it pronounced Boog or
Yes,
Bog? It's
Boog.
Boog. Okay. Okay. And you are here to talk about your new book, The Unhistory of Shakespeare. Is that right?
Yeah, it's called Shakey's Madness.
Shakey's Madness. Okay. All right. And how would you throw it into a synopsis for like a 5 minute elevator pitch?
Well, the subtitle does it best. It's Does a Mental Disorder Reveal the Real William Shakespeare?
Really? Okay. All
So
righty.
what it's about is people are always looking for the smoking gun about who may have possibly have written the works of William Shakespeare. So that's kind of what the book's about.
Okay. All right. So go forth and just tell me, because I know about this much of Shakespeare from what high school taught me. And even then, I slept through it. I know he
Well,
was the dirtiest writer in history at that moment in time. That was about it.
that is funny. Well, I'm not quite as bad as you, but I studied Shakespeare in college. I actually won a poetry contest at UCLA, and I took a Shakespeare class, and that poetry contest, it was like a really big deal. I mean, it was not that it was very difficult to do. Now, okay, so my English class, I think it's like English 10A or something like that at UCLA. There was about 650 people there.
Okay.
And the instructor said, if you can write a sonnet like Shakespeare, I will give you an A in this class. And I was thinking, how hard can that be? Because I looked around the room and there are a lot of Asian people at UCLA, and I was thinking, they're probably not, going to be involved in doing that kind of thing. Now, what I didn't realize, he didn't say this until like a week later, but he taught three of those classes, 10A, and then he taught English 10B and English 10C. So he had, there are a lot of people that were involved in that contest. And one thing that I learned from that contest was that it's not that easy to write a Shakespeare sonnet.
No,
But
no, absolutely not. See, my English it consists of whatever a high school diploma equals, and I am not good at English. I do English real bad. My spelling is as great as my grammar, which is trash.
well,
To see a magical feat would be ask me to recite a song word for word. I can't do it. It doesn't matter what song it is. It could be the Itsy Bitty Little Spider. I'll still mess it up. Like
yeah.
I'm not good at it. So to try and do a sonnet is kind of like that's way outside my line of work. So I'm gonna let you take the reins on this and keep going.
Yeah, so okay, so I did that. I wrote, okay, so I had this English class where my professor's favorite sonnet in the world was sonnet 116, which is let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. I don't know if you know that sonnet,
No.
but anyways, that was her favorite sonnet, and I was supposed to write an essay on it. And my girlfriend, I caught her cheating on me
Oh,
at right
jeez.
about this time, and I'd been going out with her for 7 months. So I was supposed to write this paper. So I said, "Oh, this sonnet sucked," and I changed up like 4 lines of his sonnet, and then when she plopped my paper on my desk, there was no letter grade on it, and it just had this curious note that said, "Please see me in my class after."
Because that's
after
always what you want to see. What the teacher says. That
you,
jeez.
yeah, it's kind of like when your girlfriend says, "You and I need to talk." She's not going to talk about something fun like football or something, right?
Well,
So
see, I don't know. I have a weird situation because I dated my girlfriend for 6 months and then I proposed to her, and we've been going on about she's gonna murder me about 6 years now, pretty strong. No real hard fights besides you don't remember anything. Well, yeah.
so she really liked what I did, and she encouraged me to keep writing and things like that. So Anyway, I kind of flash forward. I kind of forgot about Shakespeare for about, like 30 years, probably 25, 30 years. And then I saw this documentary, and I did go to England. And when I went to England, I was disappointed at Stratford upon Avon, where Shakespeare, allegedly grew up.
Right.
And I was really disappointed. And it's kind of like, I live in California, and when people come here, they
I'm
think of
sorry.
Disneyland. Yeah, well, they do. They think of Disneyland, and just imagine, instead of going to Disneyland, you're taken to the San Fernando Valley, which is about 89 miles away, and brought to a miniature golf course or something. And that's kind of how I felt. Like, where is like all these castles and that the Shakespeare stuff, and it was just like this kind of like a little touristy place.
Disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, after watching this documentary about the life of Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, and really what this documentary did, it takes the viewer on a boat ride in these canals in Italy, where he vacationed in the year 1575. And there they talk about these things that are found in Shakespeare. They talk about, like in Romeo and Juliet, he talks about on the north side of the city, there's a grove of sycamore trees, where you're on this boat and you look over and there is still, to this day, a grove of sycamore trees. Or, they have like all these little things that you had to have been a visitor in Italy, I think, to pull it off. He wrote it very close. Like, another thing was, he wrote about the grave citizens of the city of Pisa. The Leaning Tower of Pisa
You're right.
in Italy. Okay, so for many years, like stage directors, when they directed this play, they would have people wearing black and having these somber expressions because they were the grave citizens. Well, then, like during the 1990s, somebody stumbled or went to the city, and they discovered this graveyard right by this spot. And then they realized, he was making a pun on the grave citizens. He was just, so you would, to make that kind of pun, that clever thing, you would have to be there, but it slips right by everybody. Um, anyway, so then the pandemic hit. Let's fast forward again, 2000, or no, actually, after watching this documentary, a month later, my wife and I were having dinner with my son, and I went on and on about how great this movie was. On the ride back home, I realized my wife was not a fan of the movie. She just,
Okay.
she's Hispanic, and she was born in Guatemala, and she has what I call a microwave temper. You can put it on,
Microwave temper.
you can put it on button 8, and her blood is boiling.
Oh boy.
So
Okay.
she was, real hot about why couldn't a brown skinned person have written Shakespeare. She thought, that why couldn't this Glover or the son of a Glover from Stratford upon Avon be the real William Shakespeare? And so that's kind of what started. Right after then, the pandemic hit, and
Everyone's locked inside and got nothing to
everyone's
do.
exactly. So I'm watching TV, and I kept on seeing this commercial for Latuda, and
I have no idea what that is.
I didn't either. So I took out because I kept seeing this commercial. I'm thinking, man, this commercial must cost a lot of money because they keep on playing it. What is this stuff, Latuda? So I had my handy cell phone, and I picked up my cell phone, and I Googled, Latuda, and it's a drug that treats bipolar disorder symptoms, and it
Okay.
costs, yeah, it's like $1,500 for a 30-day supply,
Oh,
so
jeez.
it's a lot of money. Then later that day, I was doom scrolling on Twitter, and Sir Patrick Stewart was reading a sonnet a day during the lockdown.
Oh yeah,
And
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There was a big uprising about that.
yeah, so I'm listening to him, and then the sonnet was filled with doom and despair and death. And clicked. I thought old Shakey, it sounds like old Shakey could have used some Latuda, because these are the symptoms for bipolar disorder. I mean,
Okay.
which we call nowadays. In the past, it used to be called manic depression. So people are on this high, and then they get really depressed and down, and so they might be on a high for a week or 10 days, something like that. Then they might fall into a deep depression or despair or feelings of these things.
Right.
And that's just so I kind of joked about it, and then I thought to myself, what if that were true? Why don't I just so I have nothing to do, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
locked, so I started, I wrote like 30 pages, and then I thought, I should really run this by some psychiatrist or something. I mean, somebody with some knowledge, because I'm just, this is just my my gut telling me, to do this. So I emailed it to like several psychiatrists. None of them said no. One said,
That's
"You
always
are
a good
the."
sign.
Yeah, well, in this case, I thought they would say you need the Latuda or something. It's like, no, I think, yeah, I think you're crazy. But they just one said, you are the first person in history to suggest that the Earl of Oxford may have been
Bipolar.
bipolar.
Okay.
And so, of course, I did get some flack from people who said, well, this guy's been dead for over 400 years. How can you diagnose anyone, you know, back then with
Yeah, but a lot
something
of his
compared?
thoughts are pretty well written out, I thought. So that's
Yeah.
pretty good for somebody to, diagnose somebody for having a lot written out. Like
And
there's arguments on Da Vinci being autistic because of how
well,
much he did.
yeah. Well, what the scary thing is that, I mean, doing this research is there is no like blood test. You can't put a cotton swab up your nostril and they check
Right.
check the antibodies for bipolar disorder. It's pretty much the same as it has been since this guy was alive. That there were feelings of extreme depression and extreme highs. And
Right.
a lot of the characters in Shakespeare, they go from 0 to 100. They start lashing out. They, have these, these great speeches, and then there's a melancholy person. And by the way, melancholy means depression. I mean, there's always I looked it up, I mean, I started going through the plays, and like 67% talk about depression, talk about melancholia. So that's where I was. That's what the book is about, where I talk about this idea of mine. And one of the things that the arguments against is that Edward de Vere passed away in 1604. And um, okay, I'm gonna backtrack just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Writing this book, I had no idea that there are two camps. There is what they call the Stratford Camp, which is that William Shakespeare of Stratford upon Avon wrote the plays and the Shakespeare canon. And the other camp is there is someone else. And the Stratford people call anyone who doubts Shakespeare, that Shakespeare was the true author, like a conspiracy theorist. So they would say, you, my friend, are a conspiracy theorist because his name is on the book. There
Right.
are other people who claim they knew him. He was given, or he gave out mourning rings to some fellow actors, and his name is. They call him a good fellow. They list things like that, and they also say, well, they they throw around the term conspiracy theorist a lot. And so just to get that out of the way, and I should have put this in the book, but this is one of those things that, after the book is done, then you read
You
more.
find better ideas to put into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so conspiracy theory is really an explanation that involves a conspiracy, usually by sinister or political, people, and and it's usually offered when no other, or offered even though there are other explanations that are more probable,
Right.
and that's what they say. You know what? Um, there's a simpler explanation, and that is William Shakespeare's name is on the first folio. He's got friends, and they run down this list, and I mean they give me that same um, spiel.
Okay.
So I was thinking about this, and the historical context has never really been put into perspective. In that, um, people nowadays, when we think of Queen Elizabeth, or well, most Americans, we really don't know the English monarchy like English people do, obviously.
Yeah, we're not taught it.
We're not,
Public
yeah,
education's not that good for, outside of America's teachings.
right. So we all remember Henry VIII because he chopped off the heads of his so many of his wives, right?
Because they wouldn't birth a male child, I believe, right?
Correct. Okay,
Yes.
so they had one child who was a male,
Right.
and then there was Anne Boleyn, and her head was chopped off. I don't know if, I mean, I'm just throwing a name out there.
I'm dragging many years of backlogs to try and figure this out, and I got nothing. This is
Okay.
not my forte.
All right. So let me bring you up to speed on it. So Henry VIII had a son, and his name was Edward, King Edward the Sixth. So
Okay.
he became president. He became the king after Henry VIII died, but he only lived for a couple of years. And then his sister, whose name was Mary Tudor, she became the queen.
Okay.
And Mary Tudor was a staunch Catholic, and she was so staunch that she brutally killed like thousands of Protestants. And
Okay.
that's why they called her Bloody Mary, and that's where we get the drink. It's
Okay.
a
Okay.
delightful Sunday imbibement.
Yeah, I don't know. Those Bloody Marys are usually best for hangovers. I don't know about the casual drinking Bloody Marys. That's too fancy for my pay grade.
So after she passed away, who would the crown go to? Well, there are two options. One was her other sister Elizabeth,
Right.
and she was Elizabeth the First, or the other was her cousin, and her cousin was named also Mary, Queen of Scots.
Okay.
So Elizabeth grabbed the power that reigns, became the queen, and once Mary, Queen of Scots, said, "Hey, I'd like to come over and talk to you," she had her imprisoned for like 19 years, and then she had her own cousin beheaded.
Gotta
So
love family.
you gotta love the family, yes. So Queen Elizabeth was this violent, paranoid ruler, and she had this rule of treason, or this act of treason that she enacted, which basically said that if you um, imagine killing the king or queen, that's an act of treason. You'll be hanged. If you talk about that the queen or king is a tyrant, you'll be hanged.
Sounds like lesser day censorship. That's
Exactly everything. There was no freedom of expression.
no.
So, and everything was censored. So if a play came on, they would have to run it by the censor before, like every line, before it could be, performed. So it was treason to,
Make
it
fun
was
of the crown, pretty much.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now this guy Edward de Vere was brought up in front of one of these what they called the Star Council, which was a meeting where if someone wanted to make an accusation against you,
Mm-hmm.
they could. Okay, so this guy, it was his cousin too. He brought up, he said, "My brother, or my cousin here, Edward de Vere, claims I mean, he's an atheist, number one. Number two, he says that Joseph, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph was a cuckold. And number three, that Queen Elizabeth has a poor singing voice. So,
Okay, I can only assume execution was in order.
right. Well, he was later he Edward de Vere fell in love with this dark-haired woman, and her name
Okay.
was Anne Vassavor, and she was one of Queen Elizabeth's ladies in waiting. And because of that, he was sent to the Tower of London, where he spent about 6 months. And so, what I'm trying to say is that living in this Elizabethan era was um, almost, if you think about it, it would be dangerous to put your own name on plays that talk about um, so many of Shakespeare's plays involve rulers, noblemen, kings, queens.
Right.
Uh, you know, so let's go to Richard II. What is a play that was written, by all accounts in 1595.
Okay.
It was performed before Queen Elizabeth in 1601. And when it was performed before her, the man who paid for it was performed by the Lord Chamberlain's Players,
Okay.
of which Shakespeare was a member. We know that he got paid, apparently. Okay, so they interviewed one actor from the Lord Chamberlain's Players, and they kind of let him go. The man that paid for you know, paid them to perform, he was drawn, quartered, and hanged. Sutherland was sent to the Tower of London to spend the rest of his life, and the other guy was beheaded. So this was Richard II, where a king is killed, and so were all of his counselors. So you got to wonder, why wasn't Shakespeare? And I don't think anybody's name was on the play. I don't think back then you would put a name. I think they did this kind of retroactively, and they assigned because of the position of Edward de Vere.
Okay.
The history of Edward de Vere is interesting in that he began learning Latin at age 4. Actually, he learned Greek first and then Latin, but he could speak Latin as a child. And this is important because um, the real author of the Shakespeare canon was an expert in Latin, and I can show you how I came to that conclusion. And but we know that William Shakespeare was not an expert, because Ben Jonson says he knows small Latin and less Greek, which means he probably was, he didn't know very much. It's kind of like a polite way to say, instead of saying small, he knows little. Instead of saying little, he knows small, something.
Right.
Um, so how do we know that an expert? I mentioned before, my wife is from Guatemala,
Right.
and I took Spanish in high school. Okay, so one time, one time, my wife and I sell houses for a living,
Right. You
and
said that before. Okay.
so I get a phone call, and it's a gentleman who only spoke Spanish, and I took the call, got his number, got the address, and so I said to my wife, "Let me do the introduction."
Right.
So in real estate, there's a thing. It's called establishing rapport.
Yes.
And when you establish rapport, you're trying to say like, "Hey, hey, buddy, you've got golf clubs there in the corner, and you like to golf, so do I," kind of thing. And you
Yeah.
establish, a connection there. Well, in this case, these people, when I opened the door, they had these two little poodles, and they'd just been recently groomed, and they smell good. So I said in Spanish, sus perros huelen ricos, like your dogs smell good, right?
Right.
and I was kneeling down petting him. I looked up, and I could see the sparkle in the man's eyes. The wife was trying, like not to laugh, and my wife kind of like folded her arms, and so she was like the unhappy cat, or she was not happy.
Right.
So I kind of shut up after that. And then on the way home, my wife says, "Hey, do you remember what you said when we first came in there?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Your dog smell good." She said, "No, the word for dog is perros. You said pedos." And I said, "Okay, all right, maybe I did. What, big deal, right?"
You
She
call
said,
their dogs children?
"No," she said, "You tell them that your farts smell good." So,
I put a dryer sheet in there. Glad you know.
okay, so this is my experience coming to Shakespeare. Now,
Is it a
I'm looking,
mistranslation?
if you look at the years from 1590 through 1594, according to the world's expert on Shakespeare, Shakespeare wrote 5 plays during this time.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 years, 5 plays. But the thing that these or Stratfordians or Shakespeare lovers fail to mention is that he also wrote 2 long poems, Venus and Adonis and Rape of Lucrece.
Okay.
All right, so I kind of like the Latuda thing. I was wondering to myself, what are the sources for the Rape of Lucrece? I was just curious. I wonder what those sources were. And the Rape of Lucrece is based on 2 things. One is um, it's called the Fausti or the Calendar by Ovid. It was 6 volumes
Okay. I'm
written
not
in Latin.
familiar.
Well, it was not translated into English until 1644, and we're talking 1594,
Okay.
when it's actually before, because the Rape of Lucrece was printed in 1594, so it had to be written before, right?
Right.
Okay, so that was one source. So we got 6 books. Now you're going to have to keep track of this. Um, the next book was called The History of Rome, which consists of 35 volumes by a Latin guy named Livy. But let's say that he only used 18 of those volumes. So we're now up to what, 24 books?
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
there's another play that was performed on December 28th, 1594. So we know it was performed on that day. It's called The Comedy of Errors. And so it must have been written before. And it's based, again, on 2 books. Well, I can't remember how, one's oh yeah, it's called The Monogamy,
The
which again,
monogamy.
yeah, The Monogamy by
Okay.
Plautus. And it was not translated into English until like 1595, 1596. So the Comedy of Errors has a lot of puns on the law. It was first performed in this law college. Now, Edward de Vere studied law at that college, at Gray's Inn, it was called. William Shakespeare had no connection. And again, Edward de Vere he had the Latin chops. I mean, he's like my wife in Spanish. He could read through 30 books, no problem. Me or William
Oh,
Shakespeare trying to do
geez.
this, it's not going to happen. If you think about it logically. Now, that was just the Rape of Lucrece. The other poem is called Venus and Adonis, based on 15 volumes of Latin.
Right.
One version. Now, the British Museum says they have a quote that says that William Shakespeare must have read both the Latin and the English versions of of Venus and Adonis. Or I'm sorry, it's based on Ovid's Metamorphoses. So William Shakespeare must have read both versions. So we're trying to cram into this tiny time period of 4 years. Um, Now that we're up to what, 40 books? If there's probably even more, because if it's 15 of Latin, 15 of English, that's 30. We had
Right.
the 18 plus the six, plus another. Well, if it's, I was thinking to myself, the law back then was all written in Latin, so he would need some kind of law book to know some of the language in law. So we're getting close to 50 books just to read, to write these, and then we're just talking about two long poems and one play. There's
Right.
still, you know, and this is the world's greatest Shakespeare expert. There's another four plays that are all based on either Italian or you know, there are some history plays in there, and the history plays are based on 15 books called Holinshed's Chronicles. And so it was sold in a quarto, so people think, oh, that's just one book, but the reality is it was 15 books in this quarto. So it's not like there was like a heavy amount of reading. And in William Shakespeare's will, he never mentions any books. That's kind of odd because he gives his wife this second best bed in his will, but books were worth more. Like one book would sell for more than like three beds, or like
Right. Right. Right.
they were worth a lot of money.
Right, because I believe the printing press wasn't invented yet, so a lot of it was handwritten.
No. It was invented, but it was just time consuming. It would take like 1 year to, because they had to have these blocks of type. They had to
Oh
typeset.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
then after, and that's why it took like a year for one book just to get the typesetting right, because they would have to rip it out and have like another
Right.
page here.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, too, I mean, even with these plays, it's not like they just showed up wearing their costumes. They had to practice it in front of this guy who was going to censor it,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so if you look in like it, Encyclopedia Britannica, um, it's kind of like it similar to our times in that back then they had the plague. And so in 1593, they closed down the theaters and they reopened them in 1594.
Right. Okay.
When they reopened them, then they would they performed like almost every day because the crowds were hungry for this entertainment. So I mean, to me, I just don't see he needed to be an expert in Latin just to read through all this, you know,
All
all these
right.
books.
Yeah.
Then he would need time to write. Now, Ernest Hemingway once said the first draft of anything is crap.
I
So,
mean, yeah.
so
Yeah.
now where's the time to rewrite? Because these things are like masterpieces. There's no mistakes in Venus and Adonis. There's no mistakes in the Rape of Lucrece. So that alone tells you that, I mean, where is the time if he's performing, he's reading all this stuff. Um, to me, it just does not add up.
So
And
that's where the conspiracy theory comes in, where he's got a
well,
lot of people working together.
the conspiracy theory is that I'm they tell me that I'm the conspiracy theorist because I don't believe that Shakespeare could have written the works that William Shakespeare did,
Okay.
and that this other guy, Edward de Vere, who was 14 years older, I believe he wrote them when he was younger. This guy was a multimillionaire. He would be worth like 70 million in today's money kind of thing. So he had the money. He went to Italy. He he was actually raised by Queen Elizabeth. He
Okay.
met her when he was 12, and he lived at the house of her principal advisor, her right-hand man. So he he saw the ins and outs of court, and I think he wanted to change things, but how could he do it? How could one person do it back then? And I think that he used this man named William Shakespeare to run interference for him. I mean, he just, I'll pay you to use your name. You pretend, you know, you may die or be,
So De Vere pretty much, in your argument, is De Vere is pretty much making Shakespeare out to be a scapegoat through De Vere's ideas.
I'm saying, yeah, he fronts him. He buys his name so that
Ah, okay.
he can
Distance himself.
yeah, and not get in trouble with the authorities because, like I said, his cousin turned him in just for, I
Yeah,
mean, something ridiculous.
right.
So that's my thought, and that the other part of like the smoking gun of it, I think, is the what I see is the epilepsy and bipolar disorder mentions that we see throughout the Shakespeare canon. And then because Edward de Vere's life was documented, he was kind of like one of these people who had a violent temper. You know, would he was brilliant, but at the same time, um, he would be the nicest guy in the world, and then the next day be a total dick kind of thing. So he was kind of like well, to me, it seems like his personality fits that of someone who is enduring bipolar disorder.
Right. Or it could be possible he's a narcissist with an anger management issue.
That could be. It's
I
just that in there were one of the things that I was reading one of the plays and I noticed like people fainting, and um, I started doing research. There's a website you can go to. It's called shakespeareswords.com, and you can
okay.
type in a word, and the search engine will find all the instances and all the plays and poems and like that.
Okay.
Okay, so I did fainting and swoon, like that. And like what words would be like that? Okay, so and I discovered all these instances of fainting and names of plays and stuff. Then I with that, then I researched on Google, of course. There was a British physician um, named Ken Heaton who actually went line by line in every play. He had noticed it this way before me, like 2003 or 2006, something like that. Wrote this paper called Faints, Fits, and Fatalities in Shakespeare's Characters. So
Okay.
um, there are all these people. Like, why would someone faint in a poem? I mean, we're not talking about the plays now. We're not talking about someone being on stage,
This is
but
just in a poem.
this is in Venus and Adonis and Rape of Lucrece, and there's another poem, I, um, but
It's
like Harquin appears and then so and so faints, like that, and so people are fainting by reason of strong emotion.
so that okay, the only way I can really correlate that is so I don't know how familiar you are with Japanese anime, because that's usually what a lot of female characters do when they see the supposed hot guy as they get real lightheaded or whatever. They blush way over more than any human could. And that's kind of what it sounds like they were doing with the fainting. They overreact.
Yeah, except
So
these are manly men, like
right,
Tarkin.
man, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like the stud. He faints, and I mean, all throughout Shakespeare, you have these characters fainting. And so, to me, I was thinking to live in the 1580s or whatever and be writing about people fainting, you probably must have fainted yourself.
Well, I mean, how often could they take a bath? That's
Well,
my first thought.
here's the thing: in Shakespeare's plays, we find the tonic for fainting, which back then the tonic was something that you could buy at the apothecary, but it was super expensive. It was called mummy or mumia. And
Okay.
because they would ship it from Egypt, and it was basically they would take a mummy and grind it up and put it into like a little bottle or vase and send it back to England. And then what they would do is they would like wet a handkerchief with it and put it under someone's nose, and it would smell really strong, like tar or asphalt or something like that. And then that would wake them up. So we see that Shakespeare uses Mamiya in like I think it's three or four plays.
Okay.
So that's what got me to think that here's a man that probably endured fainting as a child, and then later, when he needed a plot hole or plot device, hey, well, let's just throw, this handkerchief has some amia in it, and it smells, so she couldn't just. This is in Othello. Othello's looking for his mother's handkerchief, and Desdemona, can't find it. And when she finds it, it's stained, so we know that it is the handkerchief because it had this mumia in it. So she couldn't just go into like another drawer. Here's the handkerchief, like that.
Right. Okay.
So it kind of fills a plot hole, but at the same time, it is like, where would a guy who lives, between it would be from like LA to San Diego, like Stratford upon Avon is San Diego, and somehow he knows about mumia when very few people in London know about it, kind of thing.
Right.
So
it's a niche product.
yeah, and the royal physician would know about it because he was into that, and his name was John Dee. He was close to Edward de Vere. So when you have you have a lot of like these little pointer, like circumstantial evidence that points to Edward de Vere beyond what I'm talking about here. There's a guy who's written a book that's called like the 100 Reasons Why Shakespeare Didn't write Shakespeare, or like that. And all of them, it's Edward de Vere did, this and that. And I mean, he does a much better job than I do. But my thing is just an original, thought. Like, I think that this guy had bipolar disorder. It's been around for a long, long time.
Right.
People today have it, and wouldn't that be an inspiration? Because what's interesting is that Kurt Vonnegut, who also endured bipolar disorder, said that writing was his cure.
Writing was his cure.
So that instead of staying in bed, get up and start to write, because that helped him focus his mind.
Right. That would help focus the mind. It would also help clear up any kind of like depression era style things, because like you're focused so hard on what you're doing. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now, we know that Shakespeare wrote over 1 million words. So did Shakespeare, who's, one of the smartest guys, in history, figure out that this was something I needed to do every day? That's what I think. So he could be like an inspiration for people who are enduring bipolar disorder. And the symptoms of bipolar disorder don't really start to manifest themselves until a person reaches the age where they start studying Shakespeare, like in their late, years in high school, that early 20s and up to 26 to 30, I think. There are different ages, I suppose, but they said that for most people it's in their early 20s, late teens kind of thing.
Right.
And that's the time when a lot of kids are staying up late to watch or play video games. And
hey, I'm guilty as charged.
And that's they tell the parents, say, oh, you're not feeling good, well, it's just because you're playing video games, or they kind of dismiss it. And so there is a website, it's called the Quest for the Test, where these one of the symptoms of bipolar disorder, unfortunately, is a high tendency. About 67% of people do attempt to do self-harm. And so they're trying to figure out some kind of test to help identify this disorder.
Right.
And
right.
So that my thought was, why not talk about it in high school or in these classes when we're discussing Shakespeare? Why not talk about the Earl of Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford? Have a discussion about it. You may not agree with me, but I think it's important. I think to talk about bipolar disorder openly, and maybe someone will notice something about it, someone in their class. I mean, we have these school shootings and these things that happen.
Do we really want to go there about the education system? Because we can go there.
Yeah.
I'm just prepared for this one.
I'm just saying that perhaps it's about time that we introduce some mental health into the classroom with when we're talking about these historical figures, because a
Right.
lot of them did, you know, also endure it, but they can be like inspirational too. And plus, if you're writing down your thoughts and feelings, maybe that will actually make you feel better. I mean, it might
Right.
help
Yeah.
people.
I completely agree. And so I graduated in 2009, so I'm a youngin. And so I can tell you from my country experience, like you said, you graduated college with 650 people. My high school class had 250. Like that was my graduating class. Like country bumpkin is what I am. But they stripped out the home ec, the shop class, the woodworking, the metalworking. They stripped a lot of it out, and they pretty much shook a finger, said you have to go to college. You have to go to college. Well, a lot of us are farm kids. Like college wasn't in our blood, and the difference I've seen in the people I've gone to high school with who have gone to college and then people who haven't is a way the mental illness scale is off the charts. Like the people who just went to work and just was busy don't have the tendency. Now, granted, they drink a lot more. So that might be something to consider with it, but they don't go out and see therapists or anything like that. But relatively, like, oh, I don't know. I think it could be an urban versus rural argument because dense populated cities have the most inclination to have more of the mental illnesses. And so I think that's where you should start focusing more if you're going to do introducing this bipolar factor with Shakespeare and talk about it and to get it more, how do I say, more broadening of a reach. If we started doing that, I guess in more urban central cities, I think you could see the numbers shift better than if you would like a blanket policy across the states.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. It sounds amazing. I really like the idea of finding mental awareness fascinating because I think we need more of it, unfortunately.
And that,
However, there's a
and
lot of medication issues.
yeah, and that's, I mean, it does fall into a number of other things, but I think just talking about it might be helpful for students who maybe they, they realize maybe it's not, um, you know, maybe it's not this thing. I
Right.
need to check it out and stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's pretty much you know, the entire, you know, thing that I tried to do in this book. I haven't gotten a lot of, one or two people really. I've actually, this is the only book I've written that I've gotten really positive feedback where people have emailed me and said, well, my brother, my cousin, my sister, uh, you know, I try not to say suffer from bipolar disorder because you're not really suffering. It's like the only thing that you know. I mean, so
Right.
they endure this disorder, and I think that it is inspirational to think that someone like Shakespeare may have had it, and if they had it and went on to greatness, why can't someone else? I
Right.
mean,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I
And
agree.
it's just a part of someone, and now we have this medication or several types of medication, and I think that you know it's what is the real backlash is from teachers. Really, teachers in academia, they don't like uh to hear about it. It
So
is the strangest thing.
it's because their ways are set in stone. You can't change it unless you change everything else and break their narrative. It's a Stockholm syndrome to their ideology.
Yeah,
That's the best way to put it.
it is wild because they tell me like I'm a flat earth believer. I
Oh,
mean, I get
okay.
called all kinds of things, and all I'm not I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the room or anything. I'm just saying, hey, what about this? I'm bringing it out as like, does this make sense or not? And a lot of people are behind it, but the ones that I've gotten the strongest backlash are the ones that I thought would be like championing this and saying, yeah, you know what, that makes sense, or but
So I'm kind of a smartass and I'm a little bit of a troll. What I would do is I'd start making fake accounts with like Harvard credentials credentials and start saying, "Oh no, this is peer reviewed. This is good. This is good," and watch how fast the narrative changes. I guarantee you, if you start getting a Twitter profile going like this, they'll change their mind in a few months. Guarantee
Well,
it.
here's the thing, the argument against Edward de Vere. And I started to touch on this earlier,
Right.
but he died in 1604, and so
Okay.
they say that, and you can find this in, if you Google it, they'll say, well, half the plays of Shakespeare were written after 1604. So how can a dead man be writing these plays? And to that answer, it's kind of like dating the plays is kind of a fool's errand because you can't really date them.
Well, like what you said before, it takes a year to write or produce and the clothing and everything else. So it's possible they were already handwritten. And then, yeah, I see you smiling like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. This is what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Here's the weird thing about it is that Edward de Vere's, okay, so Edward de Vere went to live at Queen Elizabeth's right-hand man, William Cecil, and his wife, Mildred, when he was 12.
Okay.
Okay, Mildred's sister was the mother of Sir Francis Bacon. So Sir Francis Bacon was the uncle to Edward de Vere's children, or his three
Is that
daughters.
right?
Yeah. Now they have a thing where they say follow the money sometimes.
Oh,
People will
I
say
hear
this,
that a
right?
lot,
Yeah.
especially in political schemes. A
Yeah. So
lot.
so here's the thing. The first folio is dedicated to the two brothers. And it's the first folio was where they collected. Okay, I want to just say one more thing. The first folio is a collection of Shakespeare's 36 plays, and it was collected by these two actors, John Hemmings and Henry Condell.
Okay.
There's a statue in London for them collecting these plays, right? And when I first, when I said I first sat down after trying to get back, at my wife being, so angry at me at this dinner and stuff, I thought to myself, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. I mean, my wife knows everything about me. Why wouldn't she have the statue? I mean, wouldn't she have all my writings and she turn it over? Why are two actors given the credit for collecting all of Shakespeare's old quartos?
I
I
got
mean,
nothing. That does sound weird though. Like,
Shakespeare died in 1616, and the old
okay.
quartos would have been stored in the Globe Theater. But the Globe Theater burned down in 1613. It burned down to the ground, and then they rebuilt it. So wouldn't that be where the old quartos would be kept? And so that never really made sense to me. Now, on the other hand, the first folio is dedicated to the two brothers, William and Philip Herbert. Philip Herbert was married to a woman named Susan de Vere, who was the daughter of Edward de Vere.
Okay.
Her brother William was engaged to Bridget de Vere, the daughter of Edward de Vere. They didn't marry, but they were engaged.
Okay.
These two were multimillionaires. And I thought, what if that old saying is right?
Got to
Happy
keep it in
life,
the family.
happy wife, happy wife, happy life kind of thing. Where she says, honey, it would make me real happy if you were to just publish my dad's old plays and just put them in a book,
Right.
because they published 750 copies of the first folio, which by our standards would have cost over $550,000. Now,
Okay.
what publisher in the right mind would publish so many copies without expecting to get some kind of return on their investment? They really didn't get their money back till 10 years. But these two brothers, to them it was not that much money because
Right.
they were bucks up.
Yeah. All
So
right.
to me, that story makes much more sense than the two actors who managed to scrounge around. And so the story or the narrative might really be with the Herbert brothers, who had been paying Ben Jonson and John Hemmings and Henry Condell. They were on the Herbert payroll, kind of. So I'm thinking that this kind of was like an inside job that they really didn't want to be known, um, because they still lived in that society where
You could have been tried for treason.
exactly it didn't take much to get someone angry, even because the dedication was to the two brothers. What if and by that time the king after Elizabeth was James the First, and he was the son of the lady that she had beheaded, Mary Queen of Scots. James the First was her son. So, but again, like any ruler, he could be fickle and say, "Hey, that should have been dedicated to me. I want to, you know, I want to get rid of every single copy that you guys printed." And that's why I think that they printed so many of them, so that some might survive in case he did get a chip on his shoulder or something.
Now I don't know the history too well, but you said that was in 1613, right? Roughly
1613 is when
the
the,
church
the
burnt or the
the theater
cathedral.
burnt.
Okay,
Yes,
okay. Wasn't there also a religious uprising between the Protestants and Catholics at that time?
that was more like in a little earlier, but
Okay,
yeah.
because I'm thinking of the mass book burning event that happened around that time. So that could be the issue of why there was so many printed like they were. Uh, I don't know the timeline of it, but I remember it happened somewhere around that time.
Yeah, I think the Puritans, after like in the 1640s, wanted to close down all the theaters and burn books and things
Okay.
like that.
Okay. So it
But
was later down the
that
road.
might have been the second folio. Or,
Okay.
but yeah, but yeah, it's kind of like by just studying the authorship issue and not really going into every single play, you do get interested in it, and when you see a play it makes more sense, and you understand the history just a little bit better, and everything kind of makes well, to me it's more logical, I guess. um, and you can really, there are people that really know the history of Queen Elizabeth, because everyone was concerned back then, like she was the virgin queen,
Right.
so who was she going to marry, or who was going to be next after she died? And that was really on people's minds. And she never, left a plan of who was going to succeed her. And if you uttered in public, who was going to succeed Queen Elizabeth, that was a charge for high treason again. So you know,
Whoopsies.
and that's why I think some of these plays, people may have been saying one thing, but the audience would say like, "Oh, okay, I think what you're saying is about that thing over there." And you know what I
So
mean?
is
Like
it
a little bit.
possible it was satire? Earliest form of satire?
I think some of that was. It was kind of like things that were happening in the world were being communicated to people because they didn't have television. And
Right.
it was, but it was also kind of a way of government um, manipulation, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing, where we want everyone to believe in it. But you have to understand too that Queen Elizabeth did have a good reason for being so paranoid, because the Pope um, wanted to. I think it was Pope Gregory who said it was not a mortal sin if somebody just killed her. I mean, just so okay with me. And like they said, somebody will probably get $1 million if she, goes away, that kind of thing.
Issued a
And
letter of marque from the
yeah,
Pope.
right. Is that it? So it's interesting. And also what's weird too is that back then part of Italy was owned by Spain. So because it was kind of city state, the very part of the boot around Sicily and stuff was owned by Spain. So it was kind of a weird time when people say, well, maybe Christopher Marlowe wrote this stuff, went to Italy and hid out, but none of that really makes sense if you think about how dangerous it was back then, just to travel between like 20 miles in Italy. You would need like 12 men around you, just because they had these wars going on and things like that. So that kind of thing doesn't really make sense. but the idea that plays could have been written before 1604, the daughters of Edward de Vere could have said, "Hey, Uncle Francis Bacon, can you read through? Dad's. We can't read this thing. Can you read through and maybe help us get this printed because the printer needs to know exactly what he's
Right.
reading." He had the time back then. Francis Bacon did. He had the education. He was Queen Elizabeth's lawyer, basically, or he was up there too. So he knew Edward. They were like half brothers or cousins or whatever you want to call them. But so they knew each other at least.
Right. All right. That's man. All right. So I gotta ask: have you taken the bipolar test? Because you're talking about how much interest you have in with
Yeah,
it.
I did. You know what? What's weird, or it was kind of like a perfect storm. But actually, two relatives close to me were diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Isn't it? It is genetic, isn't it? Similar to
I
diabetes.
I think it might be, and but you can go online, and there is an online test that you can take. After you take it, they'll say,
It's not like WebMD, is it? Where everything is cancer.
yeah, no, but they do recommend like if you scored higher than 90% or whatever, we recommend that you talk to a psychiatrist, and here's a referral. But yeah, you can take one online nowadays, and you're answering these questions. But it's basically, how was your mood yesterday? If you're an average person, I think you'll probably
you'll score something if you're average. But
yeah,
it's just you have to if you're average.
Yeah, please see WebMD.
Stub your toe, cancer.
Yes.
So what more could you even go off of this? Like, that's a lot. How long did it take you to research this? I mean, we had 2 years or whatever, but how long of that really went into it?
This is the thing that gets people, what I say is it doesn't really take that much. Okay, so you can go on Amazon.com and you see it came out on April 21st or
So
April.
You did like 3 months of Googling?
Kind of like that. Yeah. It's kind of like I call myself, my wife says that I'm, I have this thing about my wife's temper. She says that I'm laser focused, that when I do things, I'm like,
hey, that's a good thing for the realty market too.
Yeah.
Don't miss a detail.
Yeah. So, I didn't spend 30 years doing this. I didn't spend 3 years doing this.
And that's why the academics are mad.
Yes, I think
you dedicate your life to it like we did.
Well, this was the thing in real estate. When I started in real estate, I made a couple of observations, and it's kind of like when I first learned how to sell homes, they told me to use like the Cinderella technique. You show someone a house that's more expensive, one that's less expensive, and then you show them the perfect house, third. And kind of like not Cinderella, but the Goldilocks.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll say that kind of sounds like the big ask, and then you have the little ask, or like here's this giant mansion, and here's the trailer. No, let's give you a mid-sized home.
Yeah. Well, so I developed my own little techniques, and then in 1994 we had the Northridge earthquake, and the following year I went to a sales seminar, and he did one of those things by show of hands, like how many people sold 10 homes last year, and you'd raise your hand. And okay, so I was the guy who sold the most homes in that room. And so he approached me with the microphone. He said, what's your name? I said, Bob. And he said, Bob, you realize, you sold 43 homes. You realize there's a guy in Detroit who sold 435 homes. So it kind of made me feel a little small. But
You should have made a crack, be like, crack houses don't count, sir.
yeah. Can I put you on pause for 1 second?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good. All right.
You got the Sherlock Holmes pipe there.
Oh yeah, this was my dad's pipe.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so my dad passed away 2019, and this is just kind of a thing I keep to remind myself of him.
Oh, that's cool.
I've even got his own tobacco.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's my one way of coping with things, I guess.
Sure.
All right. So, another Spanish couple happy?
Yes.
I could hear it faintly in the background. I'm like, that's not English. That's definitely Spanish.
Yeah.
All right. So, what more did you want to continue talking about?
I mean, I'm good if you are. I mean, if you have any questions for me, or if you have any, whatever. I mean,
I guess the only thing I have is, so your book is available on Amazon, and you have your own website for it, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have my website. It's robertboog.com.
Okay.
And on there, I've got I posted some videos of some songs I've written. It's kind of like,
you gave me the Spotify link. I'll have that in the video descriptions and whatnot. So no need
okay,
to worry
cool.
about that.
Yeah.
Do you have any socials you want to plug in case people want to have questions or reach out and follow you?
Yeah, I mainly use Twitter nowadays.
Oh, simply cesspool of terribleness.
Yeah.
Oh, I regret it.
It's just that Facebook and Insta are more of like they're always selling. Somebody's always selling something. And now that's originally why I joined Facebook. I mean, I joined it because I thought I could target market to people, and I
right.
I looked at it as like a purely greedy sales individual.
A shameless plug kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you can, like I say, you can target. I mean, because they ask you, male, female, how old are you, your interests.
Right.
So I thought, yeah, if I wanted to target my book to females ages 26 through 36,
Instagram.
Facebook, yeah, or Instagram,
that's where they're all at for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, for my channel, I have a Facebook page and I've got a Rumble because YouTube is so saturated, I can't even compete for it. So this won't be on YouTube. This will be actually on Rumble instead.
Okay.
And I've noticed, so this is how much growth is going on at Rumble for like insider tips. I made the channel, I posted a trailer video, and I gained 3 subscribers in the same day. Like that is unheard of. And I didn't even plug it anywhere else. It just organically grew. I'm like, okay, all right. But
well, you got a good, you got a good vibe, I think.
I mean, I'm pretty laid back, and I talk a lot. Like I've got a sneak peek for listeners. To not tomorrow, but Sunday, I have a man coming on to talk about 2A rights and how he came from a communist country, immigrated in, and then started his life as an Air Force person, lieutenant, I believe. Wow. And so we're going to have a gun talk there. And I got a guy coming on Tuesday who's a Pakistani immigrant who lived in London for a while, talking about spirituality and the psyche of the world. So that's going to be interesting. And I asked him right away, but when he got a hold of me, I said, so should I take LSD before or during the show? And he said,
just take an edible.
He's like, I don't condone any of that drug use. And then I have another lady coming on to talk about her book Wednesday, I believe. So yeah, I'm all over the place with this show. That's why I kind of the fluffy hobo, because I like Gabriel Inglés. I'm kind of a heavier set dude, and I'm politically homeless, and I go everywhere. So it works out.
That's great. I was wondering where you got the title, and because I didn't see your picture or anything. I thought, is he going to be Hispanic? Am I going to be speaking Spanish here? But
okay.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of my Spanish. Okay.
Oh, you got to learn. Of course, what's a good one to learn that I found is por supuesto.
Por supuesto.
Yeah, that por supuesto means of course. Yeah, and you can, because a lot of people
Okay.
like to talk. You'd say, huh, ay, por supuesto. Just go on and on. But and of course, cerveza, más cerveza. It means more beer.
More beer.
Tequila. But
So a weird story. So I worked as a repair guy for a while, short stint, 3 months, and immediately they put me in charge of a 4-man group, and these men were Latino, and they used to make fun of me because I didn't know Spanish. I didn't know any Spanish, and they would always have conversations that I knew it was about me because they're like, "Oh man, what was it? You'll know the word. What's the word for fat?
gordito or gordo.
Gordo. That's what they would say. They would like just be like, gordo, and like go off and do their stuff. I'm like, hey.
My wife calls me gordito. I mean, that's her like nickname for me. And yeah, so yeah, don't a lot of times what's great about Spanish is that you don't have to be the best speaker. They're a lot more forgiving than people in English. People in English are going, you didn't say he should go there. You just said he will go there. So, like
Right.
that.
Or if you get the Midwestern drawl, it's not Walmart, it's the Walmart. It's
Oh,
around the ridge, which is like a few miles away. Or, it's a rifle shot that way. It's like it's 2 miles up the road. Like English is so weird. It's like 3 languages wearing a trench coat. Like it's
yeah. But here
uh,
in where I live, like 20 minutes north of Los Angeles,
oh,
to get to Beverly Hills would take me 24 minutes, right? So that's what it says on Google, and that's without traffic. But
yeah.
here there's always traffic. So
Yeah.
like people always say, well, you're only 20 minutes away from downtown LA without traffic. But there's always traffic. So it's an hour and a half. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Yeah,
Or
no, luckily around here, there's not much traffic. So, like, when you say, oh, yeah, it's just a little drive, it's like 30 minutes. Like, and
yeah.
it's truly 30 minutes. Like, because you just get on the highway and go. Like, unless you're not doing like crazy speeds, police don't care. Like, we've got
Yeah.
very lenient police out here.
Yeah. Here, my office is next to a bar, or I'm one of those like little strip centers. Okay. So there's my office, there's a Vietnamese lady who has a beauty shop, and then there's a bar. And I have been, just leaving my office, several times. I'm going to say about 10 times been stopped by police who think that, I mean, I just leave my office and I mean, there's a stoplight here. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it. And then I can see them circle around. They come back. So I'll like back up, get out and do the Macarena, kind of like put my hands on the car. I mean, it's, but here in LA, you don't want to mess with the police. I mean, that's,
Don't
I
they have
don't
the
understand.
reputation of beating people?
Yeah. And, the thing is that like, my office name, it's the real estate company is Boog Realty. And, I mean, I'm like, right. I show them my ID and they still don't get it. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, I don't know. It's something that I've learned. You don't just you never question why they want to do this or anything. I just go along with the program. But the people that run, they're just taking their lives in their hands. I don't understand why they would do it. But
Yeah, that's such a contradiction of lifestyles. I used to have a 95 blue Camaro, and when I bought this thing, I finally found out it had 2 pistons not working. The brakes weren't working. The hatch shut with duct tape. Like this, it was a $500 car I picked up as a project car. The local sheriff happened to go to school with my mom, so he knew me. And we were at a stoplight on the highway, and I was heading home with the car, and he, rolled. He's like, "Come on, roll your window down." He goes, "How fast can it go?" I said, I don't know. He goes, you want to go? Because he's sitting in the new, it was the 2002 Camaro at the time. And he's like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so I went and gave it all hell. And we dragged race down the highway. And then I finally started slowing down because it was coming up on a weird curve. And he got behind me. And there was this one car just zipped right past us like we were standing still. And he came up next to me, waved, and then acted like I was standing still and just took off. And that's the kind of small town police force I have always grown up with. So like big city cops, it's like, I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah, that's that doesn't happen around here. In when I was in college at UCLA, one time I did I was in a car where this guy from my fraternity was driving, and he was driving through red lights, and I was in the back of the car.
Was it Detroit?
I don't know why he was doing this. Like one of them was Wilshire Boulevard, which is the world's busiest. I mean, it's crazy busy, and he went through a red light there, and eventually we got stopped by the police. That there were guns, at our heads.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I knew the policeman from growing up when I was a kid, and he looked at me and he says, "Boog," he goes, "Get out of here!" And I did, and I like everybody else went to jail, but I that's why my nickname in college they would call me Enzyme, because I would get away, like everybody would get in trouble, and I was like disappear into the woodwork somehow.
Yeah.
So I was lucky more than anything, really.
And like for me, so I went through the Boy Scouts and ended up doing an Eagle Scout ceremony. So I have that going for me. And during my Eagle Scout ceremony, one of the sheriffs was there. And so he was just there with the project. Fast forward 4 years. I'm outside of this diner that's a 24-hour diner. It's me and my brother. And we saw this dude straight up slug one of these women that were walking outside. And there was another girl that was with him and got hit again. Well, we don't take kindly to that. So we promptly went outside and flattened his ass out. And we waited for the police because we knew we were going to, spend a night in jail or something. But that, lo and behold, there's Officer Dick coming walking up towards me. He goes, "Did you guys do this?" "Yeah." Go away. Go. "All right, yes, sir." And the women stood up for us like, no, he hit us. They came out of nowhere. Like it was not their fault by any means. And ended up the dude got arrested on battery charges, we found out, and he was a repeated offender. So we community service. We need more of that in the world. Now it's too toxic masculinity or whatever they want to call it. I call it civil policing. I wouldn't do it nowadays though. Jeez. Oh.
Yeah.
You hit somebody or knock them out and they'd be like, "I'm eighth black," and then you go to jail. That's terrible. But all right. If there's anything you want to ask me, anything you want to talk about, I'll give you the floor for about 5 minutes or so.
Oh yeah. No, actually I was an Eagle Scout too. I mean, a long time ago, but yeah. I had a good experience with the Boy Scouts. I did the John Muir Trail. And
See, I never did that.
Yeah, it's like 221 miles.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's we went from Yosemite down to Lone Pine is where it ends, and we started. I think it was around the middle of June, and there was still snow that we had to like crawl through and stuff. It was pretty memorable and a lot of fun. I had a good time.
Yeah. Did you ever have what was it called? We called it the Holocaust pot, where it's just like a goulash of all the stuff they throw into in a big cauldron to make food. And it just you never had that?
No.
Oh well, man.
Well, here's the thing. We planned our meals, and
okay, you were smarter than we were.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that like on these dehydrated foods, they say like feeds a family of 4 or something.
Yeah, okay.
And so we actually believed. I mean, we're kids. We're like, 16 or something, and so when you're out there. Now, our scoutmaster was this man from Czechoslovakia, or he had escaped Czechoslovakia by like running 20 miles every night and then sleeping under bushes during the day. And so he escaped Czechoslovakia by, or he survived by wading into these ice cold streams and then, catching fish with his bare hands. So he would like be talking to us. I tickle fish belly now, like that. And then he would like throw it out and it would be this giant, trout, rainbow trout. This guy was amazing. I mean, because the stuff that we had packaged was not enough. I mean, you're just ravenous because you walked, let's say 12 miles on these switchbacks and all this stuff. And of course you're kind of a kid still. So
yeah, you're burning a lot of calories too with all the hiking. Yeah, you're drained.
Yeah.
Did you ever do the overnight survival training?
Yeah, I did. I did that too. Man. The Order of the Arrow.
They they hated me because I showed up with a backpack and they're like, okay, you can't have like, a lighter. You can't have any of this like advanced things. I showed up with dental floss, a beer, pop can tab, and my knife, and I turned that into a fishing hook and I dug up a worm. I literally caught myself a largemouth bass over there and I had a fire going. Like, we've been here for like an hour and a half. How are you already have food? Hey, you said survival. I am not going hungry ever.
Nice. That's clever. Hungry. That's great.
Well, I mean, I don't know how your uprising was, but I was a very poor child and we always made do. Like, our dessert was a piece of buttered toast with cinnamon sugar on it. Like, that was dessert. That was a great dessert.
I was the fifth child in a family of 9 kids. So I had 4 older than me and 4 younger. So I used to tell
oh boy.
Oh yeah. So I've been negotiating since I've been in diapers. I mean, so yeah, with I tell people I was given the great gift of poverty. I mean, so
it makes you humble for sure.
Yeah, you figure things out that other people sometimes more fortunate cannot figure out or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why they say wealth lasts 3 generations. It takes the first generation to make it, the second generation to run it, and the third to ruin it, because the third generation has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy out there sometimes with different things. Like, I've recently gotten back into raising chickens, so I've got 13 chickens in the backyard, and got a little shed for them. It's kind of rewarding to be able to be like, I want eggs. I got fresh eggs. I know where these came from. I fed them.
Yeah, there's kind of a movement here in California where people are doing that now too.
They're real easy to raise. They're really easy to raise. They don't require much at all. I'm actually looking at getting a couple of meat birds myself to, get 15 of them to last me a year or something. They only take 15 weeks to mature. You're good to go. If you don't mind getting your hands dirty, they're easy to handle.
Wow.
And you just got to worry about hawks.
Yeah, that's I just need the covering or something.
Yeah, we got a camouflage netting just thrown over the fencing, and good enough to keep them out.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a basic level of deterrence.
Listen, man, it's been a pleasure. My pleasure chatting with you, man.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I learned more about Shakespeare in this moment than I have my 8 years of high school.
Well, I'm just, like I say, my wife gets pissed at me for doing this, but I mean, I make a lot more money selling one house than, one book, let's say, or something, but it's not, I'm trying to like bring up awareness that there is a guy who actually did write the things. And I think we're giving the wrong guy the credit. Right. And at the same time, I think we can learn more from this other guy, really. Especially, I was thinking, he got in jail for not marrying, but falling in love with a dark-skinned woman. I mean, her complexion was dark. She had black hair, and she was a beauty. And so he was kind of like, and he wrote Othello, which was a Moor, but we know that he was like a black guy. So he was kind of like ahead of his time in terms of like what
civil rights.
Yeah, civil rights, women's rights, because he educated his three daughters and he made sure that they were, whereas the other guy, didn't. His kids were illiterate, and his
Right.
parents were illiterate. His wife is illiterate, and so it just seems like there was a lot more that we can learn from this other guy, and I I'm hoping, during my lifetime that one day people will say, well, yeah, let's consider this guy at least, or start talking about him a little bit more or something like that.
All
That's all.
righty. So again, your name is Robert Boog, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I always want to say something else. And your book is the
Shakey's Madness. Here it is. I don't know if you can see
Shakey's
that.
Man. Yeah, okay.
So
Okay. And I will link. I'm pretty sure you can find it on Amazon.
yeah.
And I will find links and put them in the video description for everybody. And thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I hope, hey, if you write another book, come back on. We'll talk about it.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to the Fluffy Hobo Show. Today's guest was Robert Boog, the author of Shakey's Madness. If you want to learn more, check out his book on Amazon. Until then, stay cool, fam.